I know you clicked this video after looking at the thumbnail related to UPSC revision, and you are at the right place, but it is just I just want to show my grief that what happened yesterday. So actually I was not feeling good today, but still I have to record and I have to revise because the show must go on. And yesterday, as you can see, both the colonizers, they won again. First India, they lost the series against England, and thereafter Spain and Argentina. But it's fine. That is a sport. One has to win, one has to lose, and the show must go on. So, yeah, we will continue our revision. Today, I do not want to. I'm not feeling good, to be honest, and I just wanted to rest and do not do anything, and that is why the video will be delayed. But that is not how you should do, right? So it's fine. The show must go on, and we should revise. We should continue our revision. So let's get started. So in this video, I will start with the remaining 5 questions of GS3, and I will not revise the case studies of GS4 in this paper, in this video, I mean, because what I'm thinking is I will make a separate video for case studies only, so that it will all have at one place, so you will be able and I will be able to recognize the pattern, that what kind of case studies they are asking and how we should answer that case study. So that is the reason that I will continue with GS3, and thereafter, since we today is Monday, so I will start with the new essay, right? And it is the second essay asked in 2025. So I will start with the new essay, and first I will finish these 5 questions. So we start with question number 16, GS3. India aims to become a semiconductor manufacturing hub. What are the challenges faced by the semiconductor industry in India? Mention the salient features of the Indian semiconductor mission. Semiconductors form the fundamental core of the modern digital economy. Driven by geostrategic imperatives and supply chain vulnerabilities, India has prioritized localizing semiconductor fabrication to achieve comprehensive technological sovereignty. This is the flow diagram. You can see the challenges faced by the semiconductor industry. High capital intensity. Establishing advanced semiconductor fabrication plants requires billions in upfront investment with long gestation period. Infrastructure and resource strain. Fabs demand millions of gallons of ultra pure water daily, and an uninterrupted stable power grid which faces regional infrastructure limit. Lack of ancillary ecosystem. India lacks a developed domestic supply chain for specialized raw chemical, gases, and high precision lithography equipment, driving import reliance. Talent mismatch. While India excels in chip design talent, it faces a shortage of specialized operational engineers experienced in running high-tech clean room fabs. Salient features of the Indian semiconductor mission. Financial subsidies. Offers a uniform 50% fiscal support across all technology nodes for setting up silicon fab facilities, display fabs, and compound semiconductor plants. Look, I intentionally left it like this, right? So that in future no one can say that I stole their answer from some coaching notebook or something, right? No, these are my answers. I gave prompt to the AI and I get answer from there. And I also, because I already make my own answer through the books and all, so I cross check those answer with that, and I mix some part of those answer in these answers. So it is like a combination of the AI plus whatever answers I wrote in my notebooks using the syllabus and static portion. So it is a combination of these two. So these are like my answers. I do not copy it from anywhere. Financial subsidies offers a uniform 50% fiscal support across all technology nodes for setting up silicon fab facilities, display fabs, and compound semiconductor plants. Design Linked Incentive (DLI) scheme provides financial infrastructure support and product deployment incentives to foster domestic chip design startups. Comprehensive Nodality acts as a specialized autonomous institutional node under Digital India Corporation to handle international collaborations and technology transfers. Talent development partners with universities to introduce specialized semiconductor engineering curriculums, building a steady pipeline of clean room ready talent. By combining financial incentives under ISM with target infrastructure corridors, India can successfully establish itself as a reliable, resilient node in the global electronic supply chain. Question 17. Mineral resources are fundamental to the country's economy and these are exploited by mining. Why is mining considered an environmental hazard? Explain the remedial measures required to restore the environmental hazard due to mining. Minerals serve as a foundational input for industrial development and infrastructure. However, extracting these resources through mining often conflicts with environmental preservation, causing significant ecological disruption. Why mining is considered an environmental hazard? Ecosystem and land degradation. Open cast mining requires clearing vast forest areas, accelerating habitat fragmentation, biodiversity loss, and severe topsoil erosion. Water contamination. Acid mine drainage occurs when exposed minerals react with water, releasing heavy metal that pollute nearby stream and vital agrarian aquifers. Air pollution. Heavy machinery operation, blasting and mineral transport release massive amount of particulate matter, that is PM10 and PM2.5, degrading regional air quality. Hydrological alterations. Deep mining disrupt natural underground drainage networks, altering river path and lowering the local water table. Remedial measures required. Scientific mine closure and reclamation. Enforce mandatory backfilling of exhausted pits and restore topsoil, followed by targeted afforestation to rebuild native ecosystems. Advanced tailings management. Mandate the use of lined secure tailings ponds and geotextile to completely prevent toxic chemical runoff into local water bodies. Green mining technologies. Deploy dust suppression spraying networks. Promote conveyor systems over road transport and transition to renewable energy for mine operations. Strict environmental impact assessment. Use real-time satellite monitoring and GIS mapping to track environmental compliance and ensure zones of high biodiversity are protected. Enforcing strict regulatory frameworks alongside the District Mineral Foundation funds allow India to balance mineral extraction with active ecological restoration, supporting sustainable development. Write a review on India's climate commitments under the Paris Agreement 2015 and mention how these have been further strengthened in COP26, that is in the year 2021. That was actually in this direction. How has the first nationally determined contribution intended by India been updated in 2022? See, they are asking a question in 2025 related to the year 2022. So you can see 22 to 23, 23 to 24, and 24 to 25. Like 3 years of current affairs, you can say. You need not to go through the entire 3-year current affair. That is why previous year question comes into the picture. That if something is like related to, for example, this environment and agreements, so you should go through the last 3-4 years content through magazines or whatever and make answers related to the question asked. Actually, you will wait for some time, then I will come with the current affairs question answers as well. So it is not like I just read the previous year question and it will be done. No, I will come with the CSAT and CSAT question practice, and I will come up with the current affairs as well, and that too in a question answer form, not just a content. Okay, so India's climate policy balances global environmental responsibility with its domestic developmental needs, evolving from its initial commitments at Paris COP21 to enhanced targets at Glasgow and subsequent formal policy updates. Review of Paris Agreement commitments. India's initial nationally determined contributions focused on the three targets for 2030: reducing the emission intensity of GDP by 33 to 35% compared to 2005 levels, achieving 40% cumulative electric power capacity from non-fossil fuel resources, and creating an additional carbon sink of 2.5 to 3 billion tons through forest cover. Strengthening at COP26. At Glasgow, India presented its enhanced Panchamrit vision, expanding its climate goals, increasing non-fossil energy capacity to $500 by 500 gigawatts by 2030, meeting 50% of total energy requirements from renewable energy by 2030, reducing total projected carbon emissions by 1 billion tons by 2030, reducing the carbon intensity of the economy by less than 45% by 2030, setting a target year of 2070 to achieve absolute net zero emissions. The updated NDCs of 2022. In August 2022, India formally translated the Glasgow goals into its updated first NDC, making 2 core targets legally binding. 2 core targets legally binding. My mind is not working literally. I had like 2 coffees, but still nothing is working today. Emission intensity. Committed to reducing the emission intensity of its GDP by 45% by 2030 from 2005 levels. Non-fossil capacity. Pledged to achieve 50% cumulative electric power installed capacity from non-fossil fuel-based energy resources by 2030, supported by international technology transfers. These updates showcase India's progress toward decoupling economic growth from greenhouse gas emissions, positioning the nation as a leader in global South climate action. Look, guys, that is the thing that some in this preparation, because you know that it's a long journey, it's like a marathon. So there were days when you feel off, but just don't discontinue it, right? Just don't think, okay, I will do it tomorrow. If I think like that, because I already done it for like 10 days, and if I do it, I will just skip. That's a human nature, right? So if you have a routine and if you continue it for like 10 days, 7 days, do not break it at any cost. Do something, even like less. For example, you are doing like 10 questions, so do 5, 7, 8, but do not leave it completely, because these kind of days will come and go in the preparation. Question 19. What are the major challenges to internal security and peace process in the northeastern states? Map the various peace accords and agreements initiated by the government in the past decades. Look, that is the advantage of previous year questions. Now in this question, it is asking like, map the various peace accords and agreements initiated by the government in past decade. So now in this answer, you will have all the accords and agreements related to northeastern state by the government in the past decade. But if you do not go through this question or the previous year question, you will never go and read that what are the agreements between the government and the northeastern states in the past decade. Are you getting my point? That is why people think that what is the advantage, because the question will not be repeated 100%, they will not. But the thing is, if you go through this, you will have a solid information bank in your mind, in your brain. So that is the only purpose of going through the previous year question paper again and again, because I already said in my earlier videos that it's not an absolute exam. It is an exam of relativity. You just need to beat your opponents, your competitor, your colleagues, whatever you want to say. So you need not to score 90 out of 100. You just need to score marks more than what your competitor is scoring. And if you anytime if you write the mains, you will realize that gathering information is important. Yes, you have to write, no doubt about it, but you will, if you go through all these previous year question, you will have a different information bank in your mind or your brain. Okay, so India's northeastern region connected to the mainland via the narrow Siliguri corridor faces long-standing internal security challenges rooted in ethnic diversity, complex geographies, and historical insurgency. Look, now I have problem with this term mainland, because what is a mainland? Mainland is the piece of land, right? A bigger chunk of land, a piece of land. For example, if you look at the map of USA, so USA and Hawaii. So if you are at Hawaii Island, you can say the mainland USA. Similarly, if you are at Lakshadweep, you can say mainland India. If you are at Andaman and Nicobar, you can say mainland India. But this northeastern region and the other Indian states, they are all part of the mainland India only. Just because you have a country called Bangladesh in between, it doesn't mean that that part is not a part of mainland. And also it is connected with the mainland through this corridor. So why people use this kind of terms? I used it because it is in the domain already, and because we have to write the answers, and they also follow it. That is why it is binding on us to use this term. But personally, I do not like to use this term because it is incorrect, right? If you say the same thing standing at Andaman, Nicobar or Lakshadweep, then it is understood. But from northeast, you are standing in northeast and you are saying New Delhi is in mainland India. That is bullshit, to be honest. Major challenges to security and peace processes: interethnic fractures, deep-seated tribal identities frequently spark clashes over land rights, political representation, and autonomous council borders, as seen in the recent Manipur instabilities. Porous international borders. The rugged forested borders with Myanmar and Bangladesh allow insurgent groups to maintain safe havens and smuggle weapons easily. Weapons and narcotics trafficking. Proximity to the Golden Triangle fuels illicit drug trade and weapon inflows, which fund local insurgent operations and attract unemployed youth. Reflux of refugees. Geopolitical instability in neighboring Myanmar leads to unregulated refugee influxes, shifting local demographics and straining communal relations. Mapping peace accords and agreement, that is in the past decade. So these are like the four main agreement or a peace accord, whatever you want to say. So this is the year, milestone, and core strategic objective. In 2015, Naga Peace Accord framework was signed with the NSC and IM to establish a basis for ending India's oldest insurgency. 2020, Bodo Accord restructured the Bodoland territorial region, providing greater autonomy while ensuring Bodo groups surrendered arms. Again in 2020, Bru-Riang Agreement settled a decades-old displacement crisis, permanently rehabilitating Bru refugees inside Tripura. 2023, UNLF Peace Agreement, a major breakthrough where Manipur's oldest valley-based insurgent group agreed to renounce violence. 2024, ULFA Tripartite Peace Accord. The pro-talks faction of ULFA formally dissolved the outfit, marking a major step forward long-term peace in marking a major step toward long-term peace in Assam, pairing these political accords with infrastructure projects like the Kaladan multimodal transit network helps transition the Northeast from an internal security challenge into a gateway for regional trade. Why is the maritime security vital to protect India's sea trade? Discuss maritime and coastal security challenges and the way forward. With a 7,516 kilometers coastline and a strategic location crossing the Indian Ocean's primary sea lines of communication, maritime security is central to India's economic stability and sovereign security. Why maritime security is vital? Trade volume dependence. Over 95% of India's international trade by volume and 68% by value moves via sea routes, making open shipping lanes vital for the economy. Energy security supply chains. India imports the vast majority of its crude oil requirements through maritime corridors, leaving it vulnerable to disruptions at regional choke points like the Strait of Malacca or Bab el Mandeb. You can see the location of these straits. Blue economy protection, or I will show it tomorrow in the next video that where are these. I will paste a map here. Blue economy protection. Securing exclusive economic zones protects offshore oil assets, gas reserves, and marine fishing areas. Maritime and coastal security challenges, asymmetric and amphibious threats. The risk of seaborne terrorism remains a priority requiring continuous monitoring of small unregistered fishing vessels. Geopolitical competition, increasing naval presence and infrastructure development by foreign powers in the Indian Ocean region threaten India's traditional maritime influence. Non-traditional maritime threats, piracy in the Western Indian Ocean, drug trafficking, and illegal unreported fishing damage the regional maritime economy. The way forward, radar and surveillance integration. Expand the national command control, communication and intelligence network and implement mandatory AIS tracking for all sea-going vessels. Community-led coastline defense. Strengthen the Sagar Prahari Bal and involve local fishing communities as early warning lookouts along the coast. Regional security partnership. Utilize minilateral frameworks like the Colombo Security Conclave and expand India's role as a net security provider under the Sagar vision. Strengthening coastal radar networks and building deeper diplomatic partnerships across the Indian Ocean allows India to secure its vital trade corridors and protect its coastal borders. Now let's get started with the essay. The supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. As I already said in my earlier videos that you need not to give these headings and all, but because we are in practice, so you will see the headings and flow diagrams in this essay. But in real, you need not to do anything like that. More than 2.5 millennia ago, on the banks of the Yangtze River, a general named Sun Tzu sat in quiet contemplation, formulating a philosophy that would outlive the kingdoms of Wu Shu Min, while contemporary strategists busied themselves designing sharper spear and denser phalanxes. Sun Tzu looked past the blood-soaked trenches to argue that physical combat represent a failure of strategy. He captured this insight in a timeless maxim: the supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. This paradox suggests that the highest victory is not to achieve by annihilating the adversary, but by rendering their resistance impossible through psychological, diplomatic, structural, and moral superiority. This philosophical lens changes how we think about conflict. It reframes war from a chaotic display of physical force into a calculated contest of minds. Physical warfare, even when successful, drains drains the state, destroy wealth, leaves deep generational trauma, and sows the seed of future revenge. In contrast, subduing an adversary without kinetic force preserves resources, maintains moral authority, and transforms the structural balance of power without the cost of without the cost of open battle. This essay argues that the ultimate expression of strategic intelligence lies in avoiding kinetic conflict by using structural, ethnical, diplomatic, economic, and psychological frameworks. True victory is not about winning a war, it is about out strategizing the need for war itself. The core philosophy moving beyond kinetic destruction. To understand Sun Tzu's insight, we must first look at the difference between short term dominance and sustainable victory. Traditional warfare views power through a zero-sum lens, where victory is measured by casualties, conquered land, and physical destruction. However, history shows that this approach rarely brings lasting peace. When an enemy is subdued by force alone, their operational capacity may be broken, but their underlying hostility remains. The end of one conflict often lays the ground for the next, as seen in how the harsh terms of the Treaty of Versailles directly contributed to the rise of totalitarianism and the outbreak of the Second World War. Subduing an enemy without fighting offers a different path based on strategic prevention and structural conversion. Instead of attacking an adversary's army, this approach targets their strategy, alliance, and will to fight. It focuses on changing the environment so thoroughly that the adversary realizes aggression would lead to their own destruction. This philosophy views power not as a destructive hammer but as a subtle, pervasive current. By shaping the context of interaction, a state can guide an opponent toward compliance without firing a single shot. This aligns closely with the ancient Indian concept of upayas, that is upay, found in Kautilya's Arthashastra, which prioritizes sama, alliance building, and dana, concession over dund, force, recognizing that open conflict should always be an administrator's last resort. Historical foundation: the power of ideals and nonviolence. History offers many examples where major geopolitical and social changes occurred without open warfare. A primary example is the Indian freedom movement led by Mahatma Gandhi. The British Empire possessed unmatched military power, sophisticated weaponry, and global logistics. Meeting this empire with kinetic force would have played directly into its strengths. Instead, Gandhi used satyagraha and ahimsa, truth, force, and nonviolence. By organizing boycotts, nonviolent marches, and civil disobedience, he dismantled the moral justification for British rule. The empire found itself unable to use its military tools effectively against a population that refused to fight back using traditional means. The British were subdued not by physical weapons but by their own loss of moral authority. This demonstrates that an adversary can be neutralized by rendering their military tools useless through moral clarity. On a global scale, the Cold War offers another clear study of this dynamic. For over 40 years, the United States and the Soviet Union engaged in an intense ideological struggle. Despite massive nuclear Despite massive nuclear arsenals, the core conflict was resolved without direct military engagement between the two superpowers. The Soviet Union dissolved not from a battlefield defeat, but due to internal economic strain, political structural issues, and soft power appeal of open market and personal freedoms. The West won the Cold War by outproducing, outbuilding, and outlasting its opponent, demonstrating that systemic strength can resolve global standoffs without open warfare. The modern geopolitical dimension, soft power deterrence. In our connected world, the tools used to subdue an adversary without fighting have evolved significantly. Harvard political scientist Joseph Nye defined this capacity as soft power, the ability to get what you want through attraction rather than coercion or payment. Today nations project influence globally through cultural reach, academic institutions, technological platforms, and democratic values. Alongside soft power sits the strategy of credible deterrence. True deterrence operates on a psychological level. A state builds its defensive capabilities so clearly that any political attacker realizes the cost of aggression will far outweigh the benefits. India's nuclear doctrine, built around a credible minimum deterrence and a strict no first use policy, reflects this approach. The country's strategic capabilities are designed not to initiate war, but to ensure that an adversary chooses negotiation over conflict, maintaining regional stability through structural deterrence. International partnerships play an equally vital role in this framework. Alignments like the Quadrilateral Security Dialogue serve as structural checks against unilateral aggression in the Indo Pacific. By focusing on maritime security, disaster relief, and infrastructure development, these partnerships stabilize the region without relying on formal military alliance, showing how collaborative diplomacy can secure peace. The economic and technological frontiers, interdependence as a shield. In our globalized economy, financial financial and technological structures have become primary tools for managing international conflict. Complex global supply chains have turned trade into a powerful mechanism for peace. When nations are deeply dependent on one another for technology, energy, and markets, the cost of open war becomes economically ruinous for all sides. This concept, known as complex interdependence, suggests that global economic integration acts as a natural check on military ambitions. A nation integrated into the global financial system risks immediate economic isolation if it initiates a conflict, making peaceful negotiation the far more logical choice. Simultaneously, the rise of digital technology has introduced new areas of competition. Algorithmic competition, artificial intelligence, and deep learning models shape global information landscape, influencing public perception without physical deployment. Cyber cyber resiliency. Strong cyber defenses protect critical national infrastructure like power grids and financial networks, preventing digital subversion from undermining national security. Information integrity. Protecting the public square from targeted misinformation campaigns, preserve domestic unity, neutralizing an adversary's attempt to create internal divisions. Ethical and constitutional dimensions. The moral foundation of peace. The choice to avoid kinetic conflict is deeply rooted in ethical principles and constitutional mandates. From a deontological perspective, the state has a fundamental moral duty to protect human life and dignity because physical warfare causes unavoidable civilian suffering and destruction, avoiding open combat in an ethical necessity for responsible leadership. This moral commitment is woven into the constitutional fabric of democratic nations. Article 51 of the Indian Constitution, enshrined with the directive principles of state policy, explicitly directs the state to promote international peace and security, maintaining just and honorable relation between nations, foster respect for international law and treaty obligations, encourage the settlement of international disputes by arbitration. By prioritizing international law, a peaceful dispute resolution, the Constitution provides a clear framework for managing external challenges through diplomacy rather than force. This ethical stance ensures that the pursuit of security remains aligned with the core democratic values of justice and human rights. Administrative and individual applications, resolving daily conflicts. The philosophy of subduing opposition without conflict extends far beyond international relations. It serves as a core principle for effective public administration and civil service. A skilled administrator does not rely on the coercive power of the state to enforce compliance. Using state power arbitrarily often creates public resentment, damages institutional trust, and leads to ongoing legal disputes. Instead, effective public servants use empathetic communication, transparency, and public engagement to resolve local challenges. For example, when managing complex land acquisitions or public protest, an insightful administrator does not resort to police force. Instead, they bring stakeholders together, address underlying economic anxieties, and design collaborative solutions. By resolving tensions through dialogue, the administrator secures public cooperation without creating institutional friction, demonstrating Sun Tzu's principle at the grassroots level. On an individual level, this approach relies heavily on emotional intelligence. True personal maturity is the capacity to diffuse interpersonal hostility through active listening and emotional balance rather than escalating arguments. By managing internal impulses and understanding an opponent's motivations, an individual can transform a hostile situation into a construction dialogue. This reflects the ancient wisdom of the Thirukural. Those who in trouble, untroubled are, will trouble itself. By the way, this question was asked in ethics. Like they give this quote and they ask it to what does it mean? Like in the same year, I think in 2025, ethics GS4. Sun Tzu's ancient wisdom remains highly relevant in our contemporary world. As modern challenges grow more complex, the limitations of physical force become increasingly apparent. True victory cannot be found in destroyed cities or broken economies. It is achieved when the causes of conflict are managed through foresight, ethical leadership, and structural strength. Subduing an enemy without fighting requires a comprehensive approach to national power. It demands that a nation build a strong economic foundation, preserve social cohesion, maintain reliable defensive deterrence, and uphold its moral principles. This strategy shifts the focus of governance from preparing for unavoidable wars to actively building the structures that preserve long-term peace. Ultimately, the highest achievement of a strategy is to create a world where open conflict becomes unnecessary. By prioritizing diplomacy, shared economic progress, and human dignity, nations can move past the destructive cycles of history. True strength lies not in the capacity to destroy, but in the wisdom to preserve, cultivate, and unite.